LiberalViewer presents.
So, welcome to the January 15th edition of LiberalViewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup. Thanks for joining me. I picked out the weekend's 13 best, most newsworthy clips for what should be a really educational, informative, fair use media criticism and political analysis show for you all tonight. As usual, my clips come mostly from the Sunday morning news analysis shows from the big five corporate outlets of ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, and Fox News, the so-called corporate media here in the United States. You can see the topic I'm covering listed and described down in the video description. And if you want to follow along with the 13 clips, you can look at my somewhat cryptic notes here, and there's a link down to that clip list also in the video description. You may not understand everything in my notes, but you can kind of follow along who's going to be speaking in which clips, and that might help you skip through the clips if you don't want to watch the whole show. But I think it's a show worth watching. Should be a little over an hour, about an hour and 15 minutes, and it's basically all about whether Trump is a legitimate president, and it takes off of this comment that John Lewis made on Friday on NBC's Meet the Press, or it's the weekly version of Meet the Press, and then it was replayed on Meet the Press this morning, where John Lewis said he did not consider Trump a legitimate president, and that caused kind of a firestorm, and his reasoning was because of the Russian hacking, and that's one of the topics that I'll be looking at, the evidence behind the Russian hacking and how people are reacting to that, and I'll also give my opinion on whether Trump is legitimate and what legitimate really means. But I get to start with some political comedy. Saturday Night Live is back in business for the new year, and for the first time for 2017, Alec Baldwin is back as Donald Trump. And, you know, I've been criticizing his performance, and I think his performance, his parody of Donald Trump, his impression, isn't all that good. And you can see both at the beginning and the end of this clip, he like does this, I think to get into the character, he does this weird thing with his face, and he's having problems holding it. You'll see like at the very beginning and the very end of the clip. That's why I cut it the way I did, is so you can see this weird face thing he's doing to get in like the Donald Trump grimace. But there are several good jokes along the way. This is a parody of Donald Trump's press conference on Wednesday, which, you know, it's almost like something you couldn't really parody, and some of the stuff that's in this is actually things that happened in the press conference, although some of it's a joke, and I'll discuss all of that with you after we watch that 2-minute clip from Saturday Night Live last night over here.
Okay. Next question.
Yes, Mr. Trump, you and the Republicans want to repeal Obamacare, but why would you do that before coming up with a replacement plan?
Because Obamacare is a disaster, and I actually do have a replacement plan, okay? I just read about it this week. It's a terrific plan, just great. It's called the Affordable Care Act.
That's the same thing as Obamacare, and if you repeal it, 20 million people will lose their health insurance. I mean, people could die.
Listen, sweetheart, I'm about to be president. We're all going to die. Next question.
Yes, Mr. Trump, many people are concerned about all your business conflicts. Have you taken the proper steps to divest from your companies?
Yes, I have. I've turned over all my businesses to my two sons, Beavis and Butthead. They're here today. Can we get a shot of them? Shot of them? Look at those two little American psychos. You can tell they're good businessmen because how slick back their hair is. Explain how it's going to work, boys.
I'll be in charge of the day-to-day operations as well as overseeing all new deals moving forward.
And I'm Eric.
Thanks, boys. Now, I know some of you think I'm not really divesting from my companies and this is all a big scam. But here, with actual proof, is my tax lawyer.
Hello, yes, hi. My name is Sherry Dillon. I'm his lawyer. And this right here is all the papers that prove Mr. Trump is really divesting. I mean, look at all these papers. If he wasn't divesting, how could there be so many dang papers? This paper's here. This paper's here. I mean, it's like, help, help, lifeguard. I'm practically drowning in papers. Still don't believe me? I read every paper out loud right now, starting with this one. Oh, that's right, they're fake. You know,
Yeah, he's like getting into character with the weird grimace on his face there. And the impression, not that great of Donald Trump. I think his the first time he did it, maybe I was just hadn't seen it before, and so I was less critical. But I think it's the impression from Alec Baldwin has actually gotten worse. But the jokes actually, I thought several of those. The whole thing about Obamacare is going to taking away Obamacare is going to kill people. Well, madam, I'm president, so now we're all going to die. Or I've always thought that Eric and Donald Trump Jr. Look a little bit like Beavis and Butthead, so I like that. And of course, Cecily Strong, I thought did a really not a exact impression of Donald Trump's lawyer at that press conference, but I think it was sort of like a slightly off from one of her characters doing like the infomercial, the like come on down and buy. It was like almost like a local station, advertising from some local business trying to get people to come on down. And well, I can't remember that character, but I did enjoy that Saturday Night Live clip. I didn't really enjoy almost anything else on the show except a couple jokes from the Weekend Update segment I'm going to show later. I thought the rest of the show was pretty bad. I can't think of one skit that I could really recommend, although a few of them are down in the video description. And that cold open you can watch through a link that I put down in the video description. But now I actually want to get to the real news about Donald Trump being a legitimate president, and I'm going to show a couple clips from NBC's Meet the Press. First, Chuck Todd did sort of two different news reports on the controversy from Representative John Lewis, the civil rights icon, saying that he doesn't consider Trump legitimate. And then even more controversial to some was the way that Trump turned around and attacked John Lewis. And I'm going to show these two reports sort of put together. This was in two different parts of Meet the Press. And then I'll show the actual extended John Lewis clip as the second part. But here's the report from Chuck Todd this morning. First, talking about the week of problems with Trump's legitimacy, going Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then going over some of the reactions that I'll discuss with you after we watch it together here.
Even before John Lewis's explosive statements denying Donald Trump's legitimacy as president, we were experiencing a week in which our democracy seemed to be undergoing a bit of a stress test. Monday, President-elect Trump, in effect, challenged decades-old laws against nepotism by hiring his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, as a senior advisor. Tuesday, a dossier of embarrassing but unverified accounts of Mr. Trump's ties to Russia are published by the online site BuzzFeed. Wednesday, the president-elect holds a bizarre news conference where, among other things, he calls CNN fake news for reporting the existence of that dossier. Thursday, the Justice Department's Inspector General announces a review of how FBI Director James Comey handled the Hillary Clinton email investigation. And then Friday, the living icon of the civil rights movement, Congressman John Lewis of Georgia, says he doesn't consider Donald Trump to be a legitimate president. Lewis's comments drew some strong reaction from both sides of the aisle here in Washington, and multiple responses from the man he criticized, President-elect Trump. A day after Congressman John Lewis told me he doesn't believe Trump is a legitimately elected president, Trump responded, tweeting, Congressman John Lewis should spend more time on fixing and helping his district, which is in horrible shape and falling apart, not to mention crime-infested, rather than falsely complaining about the election results. All talk, 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 no action or results. Sad. Then, late last night, after many pointed out Lewis's Atlanta district is solidly middle class with wealthy areas, Trump tweeted again. Congressman John Lewis should finally focus on the burning and crime-infested inner cities of the U.S. I can use all the help I can get. With 5 days to go until Trump is sworn in, the civil rights icon has ignited a new debate about Trump's legitimacy, putting Republicans on the defensive.
John's a good man, and I think he will, in time, feel that he used his words poorly.
And initially dividing Democrats.
John Lewis is right on target, in terms of how this president-elect was elected.
I just don't want to see this constant churning that leads to a kind of reflexive reaction every time a president gets elected who we don't like.
But Trump's eagerness to pick a fight with a legend is now uniting the Democrats. It's the latest in a coming showdown over Russia. its interference in the election and ties to the Trump campaign. Trump's pick for National Security Advisor Michael Flynn is facing questions about a series of phone calls with Russia's ambassador, including on the day the Obama administration announced sanctions retaliating against Russia for its interference in the election.
On the very eve of these sanctions, was it right to have that conversation?
Now, Trump tells the Wall Street Journal he would be open to lifting sanctions on Russia in the future. Quote, if you get along and if Russia is really helping us, why would anybody have sanctions if somebody's doing some really great things? But 3 senators in Trump's own party disagree with him on Russia, and that disagreement dominated confirmation hearings this week.
Do you believe that Vladimir Putin and his cronies are responsible for ordering the murder of countless dissidents, journalists, and political opponents?
I do not have sufficient information to make that claim.
None of this is classified, Mr. Tillerson. These people are dead.
Do you think the Russians were behind hacking into our election?
I have done no research into that. I know just what the media says about it.
Do you think you could get briefed anytime soon?
Well, I'll need to.
I think you do, too.
Russia has invaded Ukraine, annexed Crimea, threatened NATO allies, intervened militarily in Syria, leaving a trail of death and destruction.
And joining me now is the president-elect.
So, and that goes into Reince Priebus, and then that's then they show then it goes into the Reince Priebus after the second part of that clip. But in between the 2 clips that I spliced together was the John Lewis interview that had the comment where he thought that Donald Trump was not a legitimate president, and then you saw the way Donald Trump attacked him, and I was reading your live comments along the way from the live viewers. I saw this one from Edwin Newton here, saying Trump never even criticized Representative John Lewis as a civil rights person. Well, I mean, as you saw in that story there, the report from Chuck Todd, I don't know if Edwin Newton made the comment before or after the part where it showed that Trump went after him for not cleaning up his his impoverished, crime-ridden district and just being all talk. And first of all, the stuff that he did in the civil rights movement was a lot more than talk. So calling him all talk is kind of criticizing him as a civil rights person, and then saying that he's not taking care of the his district in Georgia is I think 58% black, and so for saying that he's not really taking care of the actual African Americans in his district, that would also be in some ways saying that he's not in substance protecting the civil rights and the economic rights and all the economic rights was also part of Martin Luther King and his vision that was never really realized. The whole thing about the poor. And anyway, I want to show exactly what Representative John Lewis said. It was sort of referenced in that report, but here's the extended answer from John Lewis, and specifically why he thinks that Donald Trump is not legitimate as a president, over in this clip.
You have forged relationships with many presidents. Do you plan on trying to forge a relationship with Donald Trump?
I believe in forgiveness. I believe in trying to work with people. It's going to be hard. It's going to be very difficult. I don't see this president-elect as a legitimate president.
You do not consider him a legitimate president. Why is that?
I think the Russians participated in helping this man get elected, and they helped destroy the candidacy of Hillary Clinton. I don't plan to attend the inauguration. It would be the first one that I miss since I've been in the Congress. You cannot be at home with something that you feel that is wrong.
That's going to send a big message to a lot of people in this country that you don't believe he's a legitimate president.
I think there was a conspiracy on the part of the Russians and others to help him get elected. That's not right. That's not fair. That's not the open democratic process.
You're a man of action. You have been your whole life. You believe if this president is not legitimate. What would you tell young folks, young activists to do?
I would say to young people, and I continue to say it to people today, and I'm going to say it during the next few days, as we celebrate and commemorate the birthday of Martin Luther King Jr. And when you see something that is not right, not fair, not just, you have a moral obligation to do something. You cannot afford to be quiet or to be silent.
So what should be done? What should Nancy Pelosi?
And that last part of what Representative John Lewis said, I definitely agree with, that as we start the Trump presidency, we have to be ready to resist policies that are wrong, that are unconstitutional, that are hurting people that deserve to be treated with respect and dignity. I can go through, I'm not going to, but I could go through a whole litany of Trump proposed policies that are basically the worst, from a civil libertarian perspective, some of the worst policies that have been proposed, certainly in the last 50 years, that certainly within my lifetime, I would guess, but not guess, I would argue, and you can argue with me down in the comment section about that, but I want to show a couple Trump surrogates or members of the Trump administration who came on the shows to respond to what John Lewis said. And I actually, before I get to that, I should say that even though I agree that you have to stand up to what's wrong, I don't really agree that Trump isn't a legitimate president, depending on what the meaning of legitimate is, to get a little Clintonian there. But, I mean, if you're saying, is he the legal president? He's the legal president. He's about to be sworn in, and he's got the votes of the electors, which all the states, they counted up the votes, and that's how our process works. And in the law, sometimes finality is more important than accuracy or, the truth or whatever. That's why sometimes you see in these, appeals where, proof of innocence is not grounds for an appeal because you've used up your appeals, and if it's not new evidence, newly discovered evidence that they couldn't have discovered back then, if it's just old evidence that they should have had, evidence of innocence sometimes won't be grounds for an appeal in a criminal case because of the principle in the law that sometimes finality is more important than accuracy, and that kind of sucks, especially in that situation. But eventually, even if you have questions about how the election was decided, when the electors vote and then the Congress accepts the votes of the electors, that's how our system works. And so Donald Trump is the legal president. Now, whether he was fairly elected, I mean, there's no such thing really as a perfectly fair election. There are all sorts of unfair things that happen in elections all the time, or I mean, sometimes the weather can affect the election. So I mean, is that fair if there's a big rainstorm somewhere that causes someone to lose an election because it affects turnout? I mean, all sorts of things can affect elections, and the Russian hacking here, I think probably had some effect, and I think the James Comey thing definitely had an effect, as I'll talk about a little more after I show some more clips. And it was a very close election, so you could make an argument that the election wasn't fair because these outside influences or unfair things from the FBI, that they affected the election. But that, depends on your sense of fairness and what you think is allowable and what's foreign and alien to the election process. I mean, that's some big, long rabbit hole I don't want to go down, even though I think I already did a little bit. But now, like I said, I want to show two members of the Trump administration respond to what John Lewis said. And both of them, I think, respond better than Donald Trump did in his tweets. The first one is the Vice President-elect and Governor of Indiana, Mike Pence. And he was over on Fox News Sunday talking to Chris Wallace. And I think Chris Wallace did a pretty good job of trying to get him to address how Donald Trump was not acting presidential in his tweets. And like I said, I think Mike Pence's answer is better than Donald Trump's was, as I'll discuss after we watch that together over here.
Congressman John Lewis, one of the icons of the civil rights movement, says that he is not going to attend the inauguration, and he has explained why. Here he is.
I don't see this president-elect as a legitimate president.
What's your reaction to Congressman Lewis?
Donald Trump won this election fair and square. 30 of 50 states, more counties than any Republican candidate since Ronald Reagan, and the American people know that. While I have great respect for John Lewis and for his contributions, particularly to the civil rights movement, I was deeply disappointed to see someone of his stature question the legitimacy of Donald Trump's election as president and say he's not attending the inauguration. And I hope he reconsiders both positions. You know, we've even had recounts in this election where the numbers for the president-elect have actually gone up. There's no question about the legitimacy of this election, and for John Lewis to make those statements is deeply disappointing. But this is also, it's disappointing too, because I truly do believe this is a time when the American people should be celebrating the peaceful transition of power. That's what this week is really all about, Chris. And to know that 4 living presidents will be on the stage acknowledging that peaceful transition of power. The world will be watching, will hear the first remarks that Donald Trump will make as President of the United States in his inaugural address. I hope that John Lewis and some others who have joined his plans to take a pass on the inauguration will rethink that, will be with us, and will celebrate this extraordinary moment in the life of our nation and in the life of democracy.
I'd like to ask you as well, you talk about Lewis's comments about Mr. Trump. I'd like to ask you about Mr. Trump's comments about John Lewis. I want to put up this tweet because in response, the president-elect called John Lewis all talk, 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 no action. Can he really say that about the man who got his head cracked open walking across the Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama on Bloody Sunday? All talk, no action?
Well,
do you think that's appropriate?
I think Donald Trump has the right to defend himself when someone of John Lewis's stature, someone who's not only an icon in the civil rights movement, but also someone who, by virtue of his sacrifice on that day that we know as Bloody Sunday, he crossed the Edmund Pettus Bridge and he suffered that abuse. And it was through that the Voting Rights Act itself, for someone to use his stature, to use terms like this is not a legitimate president, it's just deeply disappointing to me. And I hope he reconsiders it. But what Donald Trump was talking about there was literally generations of failed policies coming out of Washington, D.C., that have failed too many families in too many cities across this country. I will tell you, Donald Trump is a man who is profoundly impatient with failure. And you saw in the campaign, he went to major cities in this country and said, we're going to bring safety to our streets. We're going to bring school choice to our children. We're going to bring jobs and opportunities to our cities. You remember that great line, what the heck do you have to lose? He is committed to being president of all of the people of this country and to bringing jobs and prosperity in ways that the failed liberal policies of the last several generations have not.
Let me pick up on another.
So you see in that last part that Vice President-elect Mike Pence did sort of a softer version of what Donald Trump did, talking about the failed liberal policies for the urban communities or whatever exact wording he used. And I have to say, Chris Wallace did not really follow up with what you saw in the previous clip there, or the clip before last, where Chuck Todd was pointing out how so many Democrats are saying that Donald Trump shouldn't be saying that John Lewis lives in an impoverished, crime-ridden district when it's actually a solidly middle-class district. And so Chris Wallace kind of let Mike Pence get away with sort of the same thing, but I think Mike Pence's answer was softer, and he had a couple talking points, that they're always building on the mandate myth that, Donald Trump won this big victory. He's like talking about how many counties he won in Georgia and how, how many, he won 30 states, especially the big empty states. He won a lot of the big empty states, but not so many of the states with people in them. But anyway, or more, I guess I'm from California, so maybe that makes me a California snob, where we have the most people, and of course we get in a lot of ways we get most screwed by the whole electoral college system, where our the vote of someone in California is like 1/200th of the vote of someone in North Dakota, or I don't know exactly how it works out, but so Mike Pence did make the whole we won big, and he also made that weird point about how John Lewis fought for the right to vote, so he shouldn't be questioning the validity of the vote in this case without evidence, and that's not really what John Lewis was saying. And Reince Priebus, I think, makes pretty much the same points, and then he also tries to put the onus on President Obama to do more, to tell the Democrats to stop questioning Donald Trump's legitimacy. And he did that in a couple different places, but I want to show the clip from NBC's Meet the Press just because that's the first show I watch in the mornings usually, because it comes on at 6 a.m. And so that's why usually I get the most clips from Meet the Press, not because it's necessarily a better show, although I think it gets a bad rap from a lot of my commenters. Chuck Todd isn't as bad as a lot of you keep saying down there, but in the comment section. But the reason I take the most clips is because there's a lot of duplication. Guests go on multiple shows. Reince Priebus was on multiple shows. He said the same thing on at least one other show. And this is basically some of the same arguments you heard from Mike Pence with this extra twist I'll talk about after you watch it with me over here.
Start with something Republican Congressman Justin Amash tweeted. He had a pretty succinct response to the third.
Oh, I forgot to say this Justin Amash tweet. I love this Justin Amash tweet. I almost, I made the title of my video Trump Legitimate President, but I almost made it I almost used this Justin Amash tweet as the title of my video because I think this might be like the thing we are thinking the most during the Trump presidency. It's, dude, just stop. So I'll play that clip for you.
Start with something Republican Congressman Justin Amash tweeted. He had a pretty succinct response to the third tweet that the president-elect made on John Lewis. Simply, dude, just stop. Let me ask you this. Did the president-elect contemplate reaching out to Congressman Lewis privately before tweeting?
Look, here's the thing. I think that, Chuck, it's shocking that Congressman Lewis, who is a civil rights icon and is a person who's championed voting rights, would actually question the legitimacy of an election in this country and starting this firestorm. I mean, the truth is, Donald Trump won 30 of 50 counties. He won about 128 out of the 159 counties in Georgia. He flipped 200 counties that Obama won and had the biggest electoral landslide on our side of the aisle since Ronald Reagan. I mean, I get you want to go back and forth on tweets, but the truth is it's irresponsible for John Lewis, historic as he is, to have done this. And the other piece of this, Chuck, is that Barack Obama should step up as well and call it what it is. It's wrong what is happening. It's wrong how some of these Democrats are treating President-elect Trump. We have a great relationship with the White House. I talk to Denis McDonough every day. We had a great meeting with all of our cabinet members and all of the sitting cabinet members in the White House on Friday. The transfer of power within the White House is going great. But to do this to President-elect Trump 5 days before he puts his hand on the Bible, it's just wrong. And by the way, the Democrats are fundraising on this comment from Congressman Lewis right now. So they're making money on it.
Let me ask you this, because one of the
sorry, I was reading the live comments along the way, and I'm going to show you next, actually. Wait, where'd my clip list go? Oops, excuse me. And I wanted to load up this clip, or this live comment I was reading along the way. Right, let me see. Yeah, Denis McDonough is the next clip I'm going to show you, where he's actually going to give the Obama administration response to this whole John Lewis thing, where I think Reince Priebus is like, I don't know why he's blaming President Obama, just because he talks to Denis McDonough every day. You know, Denis McDonough is the chief of staff for President Obama, and Reince Priebus is the incoming chief of staff for President-elect Trump. But I noticed, here, let me, trying to do this live comment that hold on, it's going to take me a second to do, like, several, oh, here it is. I saw several of you, along the way were asking about my shirt. Some people were saying my shirt was communist or whatever, but actually I chose the red shirt in honor of the incoming president, Donald Trump. It's actually a little bit more orange. I thought this was kind of orange, but to the extent it's not orange, red has always been my LiberalViewer color. That's like the color of my LiberalViewer icon. So for those asking about my shirt, there's the answer to that. But you saw at the end of that last clip, after Reince Priebus used some of the same talking points as incoming Vice President Mike Pence about how they had this big win and how many counties they won and how many states they won, and then also talking about how a voting rights icon shouldn't question people's votes. Then he said Obama should do more, but the Obama administration, President Obama gave a speech this week in which he said Donald Trump was the freely elected president of the United States, which is a point that Denis McDonough makes when on State of the Union. First, Jake Tapper says the State of the Union is in rehearsal. I guess we're rehearsing for the big inauguration, which I thought was a little odd. And then he gives a little intro about the John Lewis legitimacy problem or question, which he then asked Obama's Chief of Staff, Denis McDonough, about over in this clip.
The State of our Union is in rehearsals for the inauguration of Donald J. Trump. You are overlooking the Capitol, where preparations are underway right now for Friday's parade and swearing-in ceremony. But not every American is celebrating. A contingent of House Democrats, led by Congressman John Lewis, a civil rights icon and proud, even partisan Democrat, plan to boycott the inauguration. Members of his party are divided on the issue, with Trump's rival Hillary Clinton and former President Bill Clinton saying they will attend. And of course, President Obama and First Lady Obama will be there to hand the baton to the Trumps. I'm joined this morning by President Obama's Chief of Staff, Denis McDonough. Denis, thanks so much for being here. It's quite a thing to have you here on the last Sunday of the Obama presidency.
I appreciate very much the chance to be with you, Jake.
So let me ask you, there are now at least 18 House Democrats who are boycotting the Trump inauguration. Does President Obama think that's appropriate, or does he think they should follow his lead and attend for the sake of honoring the office and the peaceful transfer of power?
Well, the president has made very clear since the election that we should do everything in our power in this transition period to make sure that the next president and his team are up and ready to go. In fact, on Tuesday night in his speech, he called him the freely elected president of the United States. So that's the charge that we've taken. By the same token, these Democrats and others have pointed out that they've got significant concerns. And we've found some of those concerns. The intelligence shows that the Russians did intervene. They did intervene with the purpose of helping one candidate and hurting the other. So these are by no means trivial concerns. So my hope would be that the president-elect will reach out to somebody as consequential and as somebody who is such a leader as John Lewis, who has done so many things over the course of his life, to try to work this out. And hopefully not just reach out to him, but pursue some of the policies that Mr. Lewis has literally fought, bled, and gone to jail for over the course of his remarkable life. And that would be the kind of thing that would not only send a message to the American people that we're prepared to work together, but would also send a message to the Russians that we are united. Their efforts to divide us, to weaken us, to advance their own interest at the expense of ours are going to fail.
And just to be clear, though, President Obama thinks that President-elect Trump is legitimate.
The president has made very clear that he believes that he is the freely elected president. He will be inaugurated on Friday, and he will come into office, hopefully strengthened by the kind of transition that we've tried to run in this White House.
As somebody who saw his...
So there you see Denis McDonough, Chief of Staff for President Obama, for a few more days at least, saying, well, he didn't quite say he's the legitimate president, but he said he's the freely elected president. And I mean, I guess it goes back to what I was saying at the beginning of the broadcast about what does legitimate mean. Does it mean legal? Does it mean fairly elected? Freely elected? You can put in your own interpretation, but that's actually kind of a point that Senator Bernie Sanders makes when he's talking to George Stephanopoulos in this next clip. This is from ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos this morning, where Bernie Sanders is, in addition to Denis McDonough and the Obama administration, Bernie Sanders, and then the next clip will also be from Senator Joe Manchin, who's a very centrist senator. Bernie Sanders is more on the progressive side, so progressive a Democrat that he's not even really a Democrat. He's an independent, Democratic socialist. But from Bernie Sanders and then to the next clip, Senator Joe Manchin, probably the most right wing of the senators, of the Democratic senators in the Senate. They both agree that we shouldn't be saying Donald Trump isn't legitimate, although Bernie Sanders by the end of this clip makes the point that, you know, that's really just words. There are concerns about what happened, and anyway, I'll discuss it a little more after we watch that Bernie Sanders clip together over here.
I've been joined by Senator Cory Booker, who has also said anyone who attacks Representative John Lewis loses legitimacy in my eyes, especially someone who made such a craven effort to delegitimize Barack Obama. Are John Lewis and Cory Booker right to say that Donald Trump won't be a legitimate president?
Well, what Cory Booker and John Lewis are right about is to talk about the racist past of Donald Trump. We all remember that Trump was one of the leaders of the so-called birther movement, trying to delegitimize the presidency of our first African-American president, Barack Obama, which is an outrage. So I think right now the focus has got to be on how we hold Trump accountable, what he has been doing in the last week, attacking Hollywood actresses for criticizing him. I mean, what world is this guy living in? But right now, what my job is, and I think the job of Democrats and Republicans, is to protect the middle class and working families of this country for some devastating ideas that Trump has proposed.
Do you think
remember,
Donald Trump will be a legitimate president?
Well, I think he's going to be inaugurated this week. I have great concerns, and apparently Republicans do as well. And there's going to be an investigation about the role that Russian hacking played in getting him elected. Do I think Russians supported him? Do I think they tried to get him elected? Do I think I worked against Clinton? I do. And that is something that has to be investigated.
Does that make him illegitimate?
Right now, what my job is, pardon me? Those are just words. Right now, what my job is right now, going beyond media conflicts and words, is to say that Donald Trump, among other things, told the American people he would not cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. And right now, Republicans in the House and Senate are doing just that. So I want Trump to send out a tweet saying that he's going to keep his campaign promises. He's not going to cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Right now, today, all across this country, there are going to be rallies led by Democrats and others to fight against the devastating impact of repeal of the Affordable Care Act. 20 million people thrown off of health insurance, prescription drug prices rising for seniors, privatization of Medicare. Devastation, and we got to fight back against that.
Can you stop it, though? And President...
Good old Bernie Sanders. It reminds me of the primary campaign when he would be asked all sorts of issues where they tried to get him to attack Hillary Clinton, and instead he would always pivot back all sorts of questions about attack Hillary Clinton. What about her emails? And he was sick and tired of those, if you recall. But he always would pivot back to the core Democratic issues, Medicare and Social Security and education and health care in general. And, well, I mean, you heard him pivot back to the issues. And I kind of miss that. And I guess he's still there and he's still fighting. We'll see how effectively what he's saying turns into a fight by Democrats. But like I said, he's as definitely on the left wing of the Democratic Party, if he's even in the Democratic Party. And the next clip I want to show is Senator Joe Manchin, who is as centrist a Democrat as is in the Senate for sure. And he has a similar answer where, I mean, he says nice things about Representative John Lewis, but he also doesn't want to delegitimize Donald Trump. And I'll talk about the reasons he gives for that in this clip from CBS's Face the Nation this morning, about a minute long over here.
Congressman John Lewis's decision to not attend the inauguration, and some other of his colleagues making that same decision.
John, I've got the utmost respect for Congressman Lewis. He's an icon, if you will, and we all have the most respect for him. I just think that was uncalled for. I just wish that rhetoric would tone down from both back and forth. The bottom line is, if we're concerned about the Russians, and we know the Russians want to be involved, Putin wants to be involved in altering our process, then he will succeed if he sees this bickering going back and forth. That's what we have to stop. We're bigger than this, and we're going to show them they're not going to change and not going to alter how we work and function as Congress, as a government, in the United States of America. We're not going to let that happen. So for this type of rhetoric, it's non-productive. And I would like, if that would tone down a little bit, we'd be much better off and move on.
All right, Senator Manchin, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks so much.
That seemed kind of a little bit, like I said, Joe Manchin is much more conservative than I am, and I often disagree with the ridiculous lengths he goes to be submissive to certain right-wing talking points. And what I found ridiculous about that answer is it was almost like, if we call Donald Trump legitimate or illegitimate, then the terrorists win, basically. It's kind of like if the terrorists win if we do X argument from the war on terror, except this is the war on Russia or Russia hacking us. If we start bickering between us about the hacking, that's what the hackers want us to do. So I don't know. You can let me know what you think down in the comment section. I actually want to move on to sort of a subsection or a subtopic of my topic of the legitimacy of Donald Trump's presidency and the comments from John Lewis. He based his comments that Donald Trump wasn't legitimate on this Russian hacking story, and that's come out of the U.S. intelligence agencies. That's why that was such a big story this week, and that was the beginning of the press conference where Donald Trump, he attacked the press, he attacked CNN for reporting on leaks from the intelligence agencies, the big golden shower story that I didn't really want to talk about that much, and all the other uncorroborated rumors about what Donald Trump when he went to Russia. You can see more coverage of that. If you watch the cold open from Saturday Night Live that I put a link down to in the video description, the clip I showed comes right before and right after a whole bunch of jokes about the golden shower episode that is totally uncorroborated, and I didn't really want to cover that. But the next clip I'm going to show is from Saturday Night Live, where Michael Che talks about how Donald Trump attacked the press. It even shows a clip of Donald Trump attacking CNN for reporting on that dossier of his uncorroborated nasty activity in Russia. And Michael Che makes an important point about how Donald Trump is attacking the press and the intelligence agencies. And the point about the intelligence agencies is actually backed up by the subsequent clip I'm going to show of the outgoing CIA director, John Brennan, talking about the attacks on the intelligence agencies. But first, here are a couple jokes from Michael Che on Weekend Update, Saturday Night Live last night, over here.
Trump refused to answer questions from CNN by doing this.
Your organization
You
is
are attacking
terrible.
our news organization.
Your organization
Can you give
is
us a
terrible.
chance
Let's
to ask
go.
a question, sir?
Go ahead.
Sir, can you give us a question?
Don't be rude.
Can you
No, I'm
give
not
us a
going to give you a
question?
question. I'm not going to give you a question.
Can you stay categorical?
You are fake news.
Sir. I know I'm not supposed to like that guy, but damn, that was funny. The president-elect just called CNN fake news live on CNN. And the only thing CNN could do back was say, sir, sir, sir. You sound like the dude from Blues Brothers, sir. Trump hasn't even sworn in yet, and he's already made enemies with the CIA, the FBI, and the national media. That's ballsy. You still got to be president, dude. You need these people. You can't just walk into a restaurant, insult the waiter, the manager, and the chef, and then say, now I'd like to order the clam chowder. Family Feud host Steve Harvey met with Donald Trump on Friday to discuss Harvey's possible involvement with housing and urban development. Oh, I would give anything just to listen to what those meetings are going to sound like. We asked 100 black folks, name 5 things wrong with the projects. Show me roaches. Dude, you're a real estate tycoon. You couldn't think of anybody more qualified for housing and development than Steve Harvey. It feels like every decision that Donald Trump makes starts with the sentence, yo, you know what would be hilarious?
Yeah, that does kind of fit the evidence available. Like, so much of what Donald Trump does in his campaign and in his transition now and his appointments, it does seem like he's starting off with the premise. I don't know if it's so much, what would be hilarious, but sometimes he has the instincts, I think, more of an entertainer than a politician, especially with the tweets he's sending out, that he's not really thinking of the policy implications. He's thinking about, what will be provocative and entertaining, and that's, being provocative and entertaining is not necessarily what you want in your president all the time, I don't think, but you can let me know what you think down in the comment section. That's one of the issues raised by Michael Che in those two jokes, and then the other joke I liked was kind of that clam chowder joke about how you don't want to go in and insult everyone in the restaurant and then order the clam chowder or whatever, that he's insulted the media and the FBI and the CIA, and if you aren't really familiar with the insults, I want to show this next clip from Fox News Sunday, where Chris Wallace had an exclusive interview with the outgoing director of the CIA, John Brennan, and presented John Brennan with some of the supposed attacks from the CIA on Donald Trump, and then Donald Trump's distrust of the CIA. And it's kind of interesting to see Fox News not know which side to be on, because they're kind of supporting Donald Trump now, but they also have like a long-time support for the CIA and the intelligence agencies. I think I talked about that with Catherine Herridge's report last week. Well, here's Chris Wallace sort of trying to cross-examine John Brennan on this, and I don't know, you can tell me, is he more supportive of Trump or the CIA? That's why I wanted to show the whole back and forth on this. It's a little over 5 minutes, and we can watch it together and discuss it after we watch it here.
Made it clear, as we've just discussed, that he believes that the intelligence community put out information about this unverified dossier in order to undercut him. Here's what he said at his press conference.
I think it was disgraceful that the intelligence agencies allowed any information that turned out to be so false and fake out. I think it's a disgrace. And I say that, and that's something that Nazi Germany would have done and did do.
Mr. Brennan, your response.
Well, I think as the Director of National Intelligence said in his statement, this is information that's been out there circulating for many months. So it's not a question of the intelligence community leaking or releasing this information. It was already out there. But I must tell you,
it hadn't been reported on, and one of the reasons it hadn't is because it hadn't been verified, and when you briefed the president on it, you collectively briefed the president on it, President-elect, that made it news.
Well, nothing has been verified. It is unsubstantiated reporting that is out there that has been circulating in the private sector and with the media as well by a firm that pulled this information together. But what I do find outrageous is equating an intelligence community with Nazi Germany. I do take great umbrage at that, and there is no basis for Mr. Trump to point fingers at the intelligence community for leaking information that was already available publicly.
But it wasn't available publicly. Various news organizations, if I may, various news organizations had it, but they weren't reporting it because it hadn't been verified. And this brings me to the real question, Director Brennan. Why on earth would the nation's intelligence spy chiefs brief President-elect Trump in your first meeting collectively with him on this unverified information? First of all, it wasn't intelligence, it was rumors. And secondly, by briefing him on it, you made it a news event and therefore gave news organizations an excuse to report it.
Well, I think news organizations should not assume what happened during that discussion with Mr. Trump.
Well, it's been verified by the Director of National Intelligence that he was briefed on this information.
Yes, bringing to the attention of the President-elect, as well as to the current President, that this information is circulating out there was a responsibility in the minds of the intelligence directors of the intelligence community to make sure that there was going to be no evaluation of it, but just making sure that the President-elect was aware that this was circulating. And
but couldn't you have done it a bunch of better ways? For instance, had a staff-level person give it to a staff-level person rather than the spy chiefs giving it to the President and the President-elect?
Well, I think anybody who has read the reports that are out there, I think there are some very salacious allegations in there, again, unsubstantiated, that were circulating. And so making sure that the President-elect himself was aware of it, I think that was the extent of what it was that the intelligence chiefs wanted to do.
One of the questions, though, is whether the intelligence community is going after or somehow is trying to undercut by selective leaks the new president-elect. Let me just ask my question, because former top intelligence officials have been bashing Mr. Trump for months, and I want to put a couple of these on the screen. Former acting CIA Director Mike Morrell wrote, "In the intelligence business, we would say Mr. Putin had recruited Mr. Trump as an unwitting agent of the Russian Federation." And then former CIA Director Michael Hayden said he preferred a different term. That's the useful fool, some naive, manipulated by Moscow, secretly held in contempt, but whose blind support is happily accepted and exploited. Can you understand, given that, and given all these leaks that have been coming out for months, that why the president-elect would think the intelligence community had it in for him?
Well, these are private citizens now who are speaking about the current political environment, about individuals, and so I'm not going to try to defend or explain what they said. But I can tell you that the intelligence community is prepared to support the president-elect and the incoming team, as we have done throughout the course of our history. So there is no interest in undermining the president-elect and the national security team that's coming in. It's our responsibility to make sure that they understand exactly the dangers that are on the world stage, so that as they decide on which policy courses they want to pursue, they have the full benefit of the expertise, the capability, the experience, and the intelligence that we have so that they can make the best decisions for this country.
You said you were offended, and understandably so, by his comparison to Nazi Germany. What's the danger when a president-elect and an intelligence community are at such odds and there's such, at least on the part, apparently, of the president-elect, such distrust?
Well, there are many dangers. I think the world is watching now what Mr. Trump says and listening very carefully. If he doesn't have confidence in the intelligence community, what signal does that send to our partners and allies as well as our adversaries? So I think Mr. Trump has to be very disciplined in terms of what it is that he says publicly. He is going to be, in a few days' time, the most powerful person in the world in terms of sitting on top of the United States government. And I think he has to recognize that his words do have impact, and they can have very positive impact, or they can be undercutting of our national security.
I want to end this part of the interview.
So, what do you think? Was Fox News there taking more a position biased, if there was bias at all, in favor of the intelligence agencies, where Fox News has shown strong ties over many years, as I discussed a little more last week when Catherine Herridge reported on this whole controversy, or the amount of controversy that had broken last week. That was before the whole, the whole golden shower thing came out. But the part there where Chris Wallace was cross-examining the outgoing director of the CIA, John Brennan, I mean, in some ways, I think he was more taking up Donald Trump's position than the intelligence agencies. Maybe that's just because he was interviewing the outgoing director of the CIA, and so he was being a good journalist, although, as you've seen many times over the many episodes of this show, Chris Wallace isn't always the best confrontational journalist, although he does have his moments. But having shown that clip there where John Brennan talked about the conflict between the intelligence agencies and Donald Trump, I wanted to show one more Democrat not responding to what John Lewis said about Trump being not a legitimate president, but talking about the Russian hacking specifically, and then also the other thing that I think had some effect on the election. I don't know if you want to say had an effect on whether it was a fair election, certainly not whether it was a legal election, but Dianne Feinstein, Senator Dianne Feinstein was over on, let me make sure I have the correct clip here, over on NBC's Meet the Press this morning, and she said she thought the hacked information by Russia that was leaked out through WikiLeaks, apparently, that's what the intelligence agencies are saying anyway, that that was hacked by Russians, directed by the Russian government, and it was meant to hurt Hillary Clinton and help Donald Trump. And Dianne Feinstein actually believes it affected the outcome of the election, and she thinks that FBI Director James Comey's October surprise, where he announced he was reopening the email investigation because of information apparently found on Anthony Weiner's laptop, that, what I called Weinergate at the time. And I actually agree with both things that Dianne Feinstein says in this clip, and I'm not a big fan of Dianne Feinstein, even though she's my Democratic senator, but she's much too conservative for me, especially on national security issues, and, well, I'm not going to go into all that, but here's the Dianne Feinstein description of her belief that Russia affected the outcome of our election, and FBI Director James Comey probably did as well, over in this clip.
Seeing the unclassified versions of this intel report, do you have any doubt in your mind that Russia tried to interfere in the election? And then second, do you believe it altered the outcome?
The answer is yes on both cases.
You believe it altered the outcome?
That's what I believe. I've had all of the major classified briefings. I have been astonished at what has been a 2-year effort at Russia to spearfish, to hack, to provide disinformation, propaganda, wherever it really could. And I think this has been a very sophisticated effort. I think in our classified sessions we will be able to get down to the depth and breadth of it. I hope so. I spoke yesterday twice with Senator Warner, who is our new vice chairman, and he reviewed with me the terms of this agreement. This investigation has to be full and robust. If it isn't, both of us will go toward an outside panel. But we cannot ignore what has happened. To ignore it is really to commit ourselves to a very bad future.
What is the scope? I'll be honest, I read it, and it comes across as it's an investigation into the investigation. Well, it's an investigation into the intel community's assessment. Is the Intel Committee going to do its own investigation? And maybe, you know...
It's a review of the intelligence that informed the declassified report about Russia's interference in the election. Now, last night I read the declassified report. The declassified report is pretty certain about what Russia did. There are some particulars which are classified, which are not part of it. But it's pretty clear that the hacking was in both political parties, but with the aim of hurting Hillary Clinton. And then if Hillary Clinton were to win, the aim clearly was to weaken her.
Are you investigating, but is there a new aspect? Are you investigating the specific allegations of whether or not there was any member of the Trump campaign was somehow in contact with Russian officials?
Well, that hasn't been discussed, and I really can't answer that question right now. I can say that it should be full and robust with respect to who gave the order to do this, who participated in it, exactly what they did, and how they carried it out, and what it portends for the future. That's my view of what the Intelligence Committee should do.
Do you truly believe, though, it's going to be a thorough enough investigation that it will get to the bottom of it as far as the American public is concerned?
We'll see. I know that we have to. If we can't this way, we will another way. But look, I'm certainly not going to leave this in limbo, because this is the future of America. It's the future of democracy. And if we can't carry out an election without disinformation being pumped into it by another country, we've got a huge destruction of our system going on. So we have to be full and robust in this look. And I trust that we are. I have worked with Chairman Burr for a long time, and I believe that this can happen. If it doesn't, we will sing out loud and clear.
Let me buttonhole something, though. You said you believe that Russia's interference altered the outcome of the election.
I do. I believe that.
So do you believe he's a legitimately...
Well, it's a combination of a couple of things. I think that, and I think the FBI in the October surprise, I call it an October surprise, of announcing a subsequent investigation, did have an impact. And I believe the Clinton people believe it did too. They were polling, and they were up, and all of that diminished.
All right, you brought up James Comey. Is he still fit to serve as director of the FBI, in your opinion?
Well, I think that's a decision to come when everybody learns much more about what drove this.
It should wait until after the Inspector General's report?
I think the Inspector General's report is critical in this, because there are rumors of all kinds of conflicts within the FBI that had focused on the director, The director, I think, was torn. I think he did what he thought was right. In my view, it turned out very much not to be right, because the FBI doesn't announce.
You're not ready to say he should be fired yet.
Not yet.
Senator Dianne Feinstein,
Thank you.
Democrat from California. By the way, quite a week.
Quite a week.
Confirmation hearings, new pacemaker, and
Yes.
you're right back here, as
Yes.
healthy as ever.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thank
nice
you.
to see you. When we come back.
Well, I don't know if she's healthy as ever, but I saw a much longer, very positive report on Senator Dianne Feinstein done by Rachel Maddow on the Rachel Maddow Show, which is sort of the sister network of NBC, the MSNBC network over, and she talked about how Dianne Feinstein only missed one day from the hearings in the Senate, even though she had to go into the hospital and have a pacemaker put in. So, and she's also like 82, 83 years old. So that's, at least, I guess that does show some strength. And, but Chuck Todd is being a little bit obsequious there, I guess, which is one of the failings of the, what do they call it, the concierge press anyway. But you can put your critical comments about Chuck Todd down in the comment section, but as to what Senator Dianne Feinstein actually said there, I do agree that the drip of all the WikiLeaks email stuff from the DNC and from John Podesta, that hurt Hillary Clinton over time, I'm sure. And so that did probably affect the outcome of the election, and that it may have changed some people's minds, and you know, some Democrats may have stayed home because they were disgusted with the way the WikiLeaks information showed that the DNC was biased against Bernie Sanders and biased in favor of Hillary Clinton. I mean, we all kind of knew that anyway, but there was like written proof from the leaked WikiLeaks email, so that may have suppressed Democratic turnout, and some of the nasty things that people say in emails that they don't think are ever going to be made public. I mean, that would hurt any campaign. And apparently there might have been some negative stuff about Donald Trump, all the way going up to the, you know, sort of, I guess, what I call the golden shower reporting, that that stuff wasn't leaked by Russia, though we don't even know if any of that's true. And it looks like most of the, as far as I know, all the emails that were leaked to WikiLeaks, whether it was by the Russians or not by the Russians, that's the conclusion of the intelligence community, but all the emails turned out to be accurate as far as I know. But I do think that those emails and the way it was leaked out had some effect on the election. And then what James Comey did, I think actually, based on the way I covered the election, if you watched my show week after week, you saw there was like week after week where, especially around the time the Billy Bush tapes came out from Access Hollywood, and Donald Trump was on the defensive for a few weeks there. And if you look at the title of my Liberal Viewer Sunday Live clip roundups from the last month before the election, there was like Trump can't win ? You know, Trump headed for big loss ? And then I finally get to the James Comey letter week, and it's like Hillary's bad week, and it definitely stopped the momentum for Donald Trump. Of all the things that happened in the election, that James Comey thing was definitely effective in changing, I thought, the way things were going. It was like 10, 11 days before the election, and a lot of people had voted, but a lot of people still hadn't cast their votes, and I think it could have changed the outcome. And what James Comey did, I think, was also totally inappropriate for a prosecutor, having been a criminal defense attorney for several years, when not just what he did in October, but even what he did in July when he announced the non-indictment. It's kind of like what Bob McCullough did after the Michael Brown killing in Ferguson, Missouri. Bob McCullough was the prosecutor in St. Louis County, Missouri. He was the prosecutor in St. Louis County, Missouri, back when I was a public defender in St. Louis County, Missouri. That's how I remember his name, Bob McCullough. He's been the prosecutor there for decades, literally. And I don't know if you remember the big press conference he held where they didn't indict, but he said all these things that like swayed the public's opinion in favor of the police. Well, it's kind of what James Comey did back in July when he didn't indict Hillary Clinton, but he said all these things, you know, calling her extremely careless, and prosecutors aren't supposed to do that. If they don't indict, they're not supposed to then like editorialize about what a bad person the person they're not charging with a crime is. That's totally inappropriate for any prosecutor. And then making a statement that could affect the outcome of an election within like 60 days of an election is against Justice Department policy. So James Comey is definitely wrong. I mean, some people say he'd be criticized either way. Well, if you're going to be criticized either way, then do the thing that actually follows the policies that prosecutors and members of the Justice Department are supposed to follow. That's what I say. But I have, 2 more clips I want to show. That's on the question of the fairness of the election, I guess, which is sort of a subjective term about whether you think there were foreign influences, and what's a foreign influence is, weird machinations inside the FBI. Is that a foreign influence on the election? That's actually a domestic influence, but it's an improper influence anyway. But it doesn't mean that Donald Trump isn't the legitimate legal president of the United States. But these next couple clips actually do question whether Donald Trump is the legal president of the United States, not at the moment he's sworn in, but the moment after he's sworn in. You have to question, is he violating the emoluments clause of the U.S. Constitution, which, here's my Constitution, I always have it handy. And I want to show first 2 ethics experts, one Democratic, one Republican. One who served, the first guy, Richard Painter, served in the Bush administration, and then the second guy is Norman Eisen. He was Obama's ethics advisor, and they both talked about, remember that clip I showed at the beginning where Cecily Strong was satirically talking about all the papers that Donald Trump signed that must mean he's gotten rid of all the conflicts and he's given the business over to Eric and Donald Jr. Well, here are a Republican ethics expert for Bush and a Democratic expert for Obama, both saying that does not solve the emoluments clause issue that I will discuss after we watch that clip together here.
If we've seen what we're going to see from President-elect Trump in terms of dealing with his conflicts of interest, do you believe he is going to be in violation of the Constitution when he takes that oath on Friday?
I believe yes, if he does not make sure that all the foreign government payments, and this includes banks and other corporations owned by foreign governments and sovereign wealth funds, that all of that money is not out of the Trump organization by Friday when he takes the oath. He will be in violation of the Constitution. The founders knew that foreign governments would try to meddle in our elections, meddle in our politics, and they did not want any foreign government money coming to anyone holding a position of trust with our government.
I see you nodding your head in agreement.
Why is Congressman Chaffetz investigating Walter Schaub for doing his job, George, for speaking so courageously? It was one of the most extraordinary acts of courage that I've seen from a career public official, instead of investigating the fact that the president-elect is going to be violating the Constitution with these flows of foreign funds. They admit they have a problem. They say, oh, well, we won't, his lawyer said, well, we won't take the profits in the hotels. What about the golf courses? What about the huge foreign bank loans? What about the condos and the apartments that they sell, the permitting and the trademarks? Mr. Chaffetz should be investigating the president-elect's impending violation of the Constitution, not this poor government official who's just trying to do his job. And Mr. Chaffetz has endorsed that unconstitutional plan.
Let's take that question to him. Thank you both very much. Congressman Chaffetz, Chair of the House.
So yeah, you see both a Republican and a Democratic ethics expert talking about how this violates the emoluments clause of the Constitution that says that the president cannot take a profit from a foreign source, and there are all sorts of sources of foreign profit for for Donald Trump beyond the hotels that in his press conference on Wednesday he said that the money from his hotels is actually going to go directly to the U.S. Treasury, any profits. But there are all sorts of other investments. I mean, we don't really know because there are no tax returns. And the problem with violating the emoluments clause, and I've talked about this before, this is violating the Constitution, not violating conflict of interest laws. So it's not something that he would be prosecuted for. The actual remedy for a violation of the emoluments clause of the Constitution is impeachment. And I'm sorry, I'm getting distracted. Sandy has shown up over here. Finally showing up for the show. Maybe I'll have a chance to give you all a picture of Sandy at the end there. That's what I was trying to do when I was a little slow on coming back from the last clip. But this next clip is going to show you why, at least when the Republicans are in charge of the Congress, it's up to the House of Representatives to impeach the president, and then it's up to the Senate to try and convict the president if he's violated the emoluments clause of the Constitution. And this is the House Oversight Committee Chair Jason Chaffetz, who was all hot to investigate Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama over Benghazi. Remember all the Benghazi investigations? A lot of those were on the direction of Jason Chaffetz. But apparently he doesn't want to get any, Donald Trump hasn't given his tax returns, and they're not going to ask about any sources of foreign money that he might be getting, at least if you listen to Jason Chaffetz's answer. And if the Republican Congress isn't willing to investigate or impeach, then there is no remedy for a violation of the Constitution's emoluments clause, as I will discuss after we watch that last clip together over here.
Mr. Eisen, what's the answer to his question?
Well, the president-elect has a duty and obligation to abide by the law, and he is exempt from most all of these laws. He has done a financial disclosure, which has gone through the Office of Government Ethics. I think he's done that twice. That is his duty under the law. I hear no complaints about that. My question is about the head of the Office of Government Ethics. Is he acting ethically when he sent out 9 tweets praising Donald Trump, saying that his plan was brilliant? How did he come to that conclusion, and how does he come to his current conclusions, having never done an investigation and never looked at the paperwork in the point where he can actually come to a reasonable conclusion? I think that's unethical. I really do.
He was sending out the tweets to the idea that he had heard, and you're right, it was premature, that he had heard that Donald Trump was going to divest. But I want to get to more on that in a minute, but let's get to this other question. On the conflict of interest laws, you just heard both Mr. Painter and Mr. Eisen say that they believe that the president-elect is going to be in violation of the emoluments clause of the Constitution on day one. Have you asked for documents from the president-elect?
No, that's speculative. I mean, Donald Trump hasn't even been sworn in yet. And so I do believe that he has set up a plan where the revenue or the profits that are coming to the hotel will be given directly to the Treasury. But I'm not going to go on this fishing expedition that they want me to, that the Democrats want me to. The president has a duty and obligation to comply with the law. But again, he's exempt from almost all of these things. Now, the emoluments clause he's going to have to look at, and we'll see how that rolls out.
Well, yeah, and the ranking Democrats of several different committees, 21 different committees, have petitioned the Speaker to request documents detailing the president-elect's business dealings around the world to get at this question, including possible loans and investments from Russians. Will you request that information?
No, I have no plans to do that at this point. What you need to look at is what is required by law, which I believe that Donald Trump has complied with. That is, because I've heard no complaints about this, and that is the financial disclosures. That is what's required by law. That's what Donald Trump
Isn't
has
the
done.
emoluments provision of the Constitution the law of the land?
Well, yeah, it's in the Constitution, but the president-elect hasn't even been sworn in yet. So all this flailing about how he's done everything wrong is a little premature at best.
Well, yes, and 5 days from now, he will be the president of the United States. At that point, will you be requesting this information?
No, not necessarily. Look, I'm not just going to go on these fishing expeditions. I didn't do that with President Obama. We didn't go through this with President Obama. I think the world and certainly the American voters understand that Donald Trump has mass holdings. He's worth billions of dollars. He's been very successful in business, and I think the American voters understood that when they voted him in.
I think a lot of Democrats might disagree with what your characterization of President Obama and the investigations you did of Hillary Clinton and her email server, and of course Benghazi as well. But on this particular issue, there is another issue with
those were about specific policies and actions once they were in office. I didn't investigate Hillary Clinton before she was in office. I started investigating Hillary Clinton's actions after the Inspector General said that there was classified information housed in a non-classified setting. That's when we began our investigation.
I took your point on that at the beginning of the investigation now, but I asked you if you were going to be looking at these issues once the president-elect is actually president of the United States.
Look, if people have questions about this, the White House is going to be the one that has to answer those questions. Until we see something that is actually wrongdoing, we're probably not going to just go on a fishing trip to go see, we're just not going to do that. That's not what we do in this committee. It's not what we have done.
Another possibility.
So that's like totally bogus because Donald Trump hasn't released his tax return, so we have no idea what the foreign investments are in his businesses and the trust he set up with his kids running the trust. That doesn't mean that he doesn't. I mean, even if it just benefits his children, that's arguably a benefit. And it looks like at least as long as Republicans are in charge of the Congress, there's no one to even investigate, never mind prosecute a violation of the Emoluments Clause of the Constitution. And like I said, that's the only remedy for a violation of the Constitution in that way by the president is impeachment and by the House of Representatives, removal by the Senate under the current leadership, unless they want Mike Pence to be president for some reason. I don't really see that happening. I suppose it's possible. So many weird things have happened. It's not impossible, but anyway, that's the last clip I want to show you, although I don't know, have I ever showed an actual video clip of Sandy on the show? I happened to get a 3-second clip real quick of Sandy finally showing up to watch the show for the fans of Sandy out there. That's Sandy in motion on the show. Well, that may be the first time, I don't know. But thanks for all the people who joined me as live viewers, or also the people who are commenting on the recorded show. I will be back next week, probably a little bit earlier for my Sunday live clip roundup. Hopefully this week I'll have time to put out some sort of edited, produced video. Friday's the big day where we turn over to Donald Trump as President of the United States. I don't know if I'll have anything to cover on that. And then Wednesday is President Obama's last press conference. Maybe something will come out of that. Who knows? What I put out is kind of based on what the news is, but I am going to definitely try to make more edited, produced videos this year, 2017. So look for those if you want to help support that or help support the clips I pick out for you. Down in the video description, there's a link to my Patreon page. You can become one of my patrons, or you can click on this little eye up here and give me direct funding through YouTube fan funding. I will be back next week, as I said, and every week for the foreseeable future for Liberal Viewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup. And until I make my next video, or I'm back next Sunday, I guess I'll be seeing all of you around the internet.